It's that time of the year, baby. Seasonal roundup time. I got 18 shows to get through here, so strap the fuck in. Keep your hands and feet inside the car at all times, or you will be thrown overboard. If you don't know how this works, I'm basically just going to give my thoughts on all the shows I watched this season, and I'm not going to try to spoil too much. I might spoil some stuff here and there, but I'll let you know if I do. As a general rule, if you see a series on my bookshelf here, I won't be covering it in future roundup videos, just because I've already read the manga and they're big shonen. I want to highlight, like, you know, more dumbed down seasonal shows, like less popular stuff that I watch. So that's what these videos are for. With that out of the way, let's get going. So to start off, let's talk about Orient. Now this is just a delightful little shonen series. It's by the creator of Magi. So if any of you have seen The Kingdom of Magic, that show, same creator. And it's just fun. You know, we've got like an energetic main character with high aspirations. We've got a counterpoint main character who's a little less enthusiastic, and then we've got a third, a woman, voiced by Rie Takahashi. So you've got the whole crew, basically. These three give me Jujutsu Kaisen trio vibes if they were in Fairy Tail, essentially. Like, imagine the JJK trio, but not constantly surrounded by fucked up shit, and a little more wholesome. The backstories of all these three characters are different and distinct enough to justify their behaviors and personalities. Musashi's backstory that's revealed in the second half is really, really good. It hits really hard. Like, there's definitely an element of realism to that backstory, and it kind of shows how he's gotten to where he is now. The other twos are good as well, but Musashi is, as the last one of the three that's revealed, is like, whoa, that's some real shit right there. One thing I really like about this series in particular is that our view of the world as a whole expands with the protagonist, because it kind of starts off as like very standard thing, like, oh, we're gonna become samurai, ye fucking haw. But as you start to learn more about the world of samurai and the trials and tribulations you have to face in order to become one, you learn that alongside the protagonist, and as you learn that, the world kind of expands naturally. It's really, really good. It's obviously more than just, oh, we're gonna be samurai, we're gonna be the strongest in the world, woohoo! It's more than that, you know. Like it, and our understanding of that isn't any more than the main character's understanding of the world. So it just constantly is expanding our understanding of what a samurai is and what they have to do, that kind of thing. It's very, very good. So I can't comment too much on this, but part 2 was revealed for summer. So part 2 is gonna go fucking raw as shit. Part 2 is gonna be so good. I've read the manga, so I can't really say too much here. And that's why I call them samurai, because in the manga they're called samurai. In the anime they call them bushis, which is just the Japanese name. But yeah, the anime is gorgeous too. The color palette is awesome. The pacing is not as like, they've covered a lot of the manga already. It's better than I was expecting. I thought it was going to go a little slower. So I'm really excited for part 2, and I'll be covering that in the summer video. So very good. Definitely recommend Orient if you're interested in like the shonen stuff. Very cute, very wholesome. Next up, Akebi's sailor uniform. This is just the epitome of cute. I don't even know what else to say about it. Like, I don't usually watch the all girls types of shows like this, but my God, something about this one is absolutely adorable, and I can't stress enough how good the visuals are in this show. Like, I'm pretty sure there was more time and care put into like a 3-second shot of Akebi tying her hair up into a ponytail than like the entirety of the visuals in some of the other shows we're going to talk about today. It's insanely gorgeous. I mean, unbelievable. Our little Miss Komichi here is basically just the epitome of wholesome. There's nothing that phases her, and like, you can't make her unwholesome. She is the most wholesome. All she wants is to get some friends, and she goes to this far off school from a fucking country ass town, take me home country roads, and she moves to the big city. Classic story. Fucking Journey talked about it in Don't Stop Believin'. It's the same fucking shit. Like, they went she literally went to school in the big city, made a bunch of friends, and did a dance at the end that almost made me cry. Like, I didn't pay attention half of the time. You don't even really need to. You just have to know that she's doing cute shit. Like, I honestly only paid like about 50%. I only devoted about 50% of my attention to the show at any given point, but it's delightful. It's so much fun. It definitely like is slow. I feel like these shows are that's kind of a given for this type of show, but at the same time, I really can't say enough good things about it for what it is, right? Like, given that it is this type of all-girls slice of life shit that's like super down to earth, it won me over. I was really impressed. Koichi does a whole lot of stuff in this. She like plays volleyball, she does cheering, she takes pictures, she goes fishing. Everything she does is just cute. And all the friends that she does things with are very cute. It's all just cute. And if you're into this show, I imagine this is about as good as they get, but don't quote me on that. Like, this show is just like watching a tiny dog, because it's not like you expect a lot out of a tiny dog, but whenever you watch a little puppy, you just can't help but be like, oh, that's what this show is. It's delightful. Next up, Sabikui Bisco. The setup is pretty interesting. It's one of the most unique shows I've seen in a long time. We're presented with this very dull and sad-looking dystopian future where medicines are very scarce and doctors are very scarce, but prostitutes are not scarce. But overall, I think that's the takeaway from this is the dynamic between Milo and Bisco is the selling point here. Like, that's what we're all here to see. And their relationship develops very quickly, and they become really good friends in no time flat, and they play off each other really nicely because they're both very different. It's very, very nice to see. And even the extra characters, Milo's sister, whose name I forget, and the pink girl's name, whose name I also forget. The pink-haired girl, whose name I also forget. They add to the dynamic. So all the characters here are really nice. But yeah, the takeaway here is Milo and Bisco, even just watching them talk is fun. They're pretty much total opposites, but they're almost always on the same page. It's just fun. I think it's a bit confusing at first, like, what is exactly the deal with the rust? Like, how did it get there in the first place? How, aside from like, because you got the mushroom keepers, and they are the ones who like can heal the rust with the mushrooms or something. It's a bit off the wall, but I've never seen a show with any more unique ideas, or like even just unique presentation. It feels like the most unique show I've seen in a long time. I mean, they spend most of the show riding a giant crab around. Like, everything is so out of the box that it makes you like, wait, what? But that's the show's strength as well, right? Like, everything is so unusual that it's awesome. I imagine that Sabikui Bisco was created by a very talented writer who took a fuckload of shrooms and then wrote down a bunch of random ideas, and then woke up the next morning sober and wrote them all into a really well-told story and an interesting world. There's some really well animated and choreographed action sequences here as well. It's got it all, really. Like, there's not much you're missing here in Sabikui Bisco. I really can't say much. Like, there's not really too many flaws with it. It's just kind of a very odd presentation. You just kind of have to kind of adjust yourself to get on board with it, There's a lot of turning points here that you wouldn't expect, and one big one in particular, which I won't spoil, but if you know, you know. Sabikui Bisco is definitely a fun experience if you're willing to go off the wall just a bit and get a bit wacky. Batting cleanup today is Dress Up Darling. Now, this show is adorable. There's no two ways about it, no beating around the bush. It's just adorable. The first 4 episodes especially, I was totally on board with. The whole setup and execution of everything from the very start to Marin going to the cosplay event, I was totally on board. And even the addition of the 2 pink-haired girls whose names I forget, they added to the story in a way that made sense, because the whole focus was the cosplay, right? So I can't complain about those, and it couldn't have stayed Gojo and Marin forever, so adding those 2 characters as like an outside force to act upon those 2 was good. It worked well. Now, this was like the most popular show this season, and you can thank her for that. Marin single-handedly carried this show, and it's almost impressive. But I don't think there's anything particularly special about this show. Same vein as Komi-san from last season. I don't think there's anything particularly special about this show. It's just Marin is such an unusual presence, an unusual enigma that you don't see in anime, in the way that she is always herself and she's always honest. You don't see that. in anime, because that's just, I mean, the whole fucking point. You know, a lot of anime are built on misunderstandings and, you know, people not being honest with themselves. Like, we have a bunch of tropes like that relate to people not being honest with themselves. That's what it's all about. Like, there's so many anime like that, and Marin breaks the mold in a way that we don't see often, if at all, in anime. She's so unapologetically herself all the time, and there's no stopping her. And Gojo, even as serious as he is, and he looks kind of like a wooden plank next to Marin, it's he bounces off well, and he has his moments, right? The moments of him looking and doing serious research into the weird, wacky shit that Marin's into is very funny. Those are the moments that are consistently funny in this show. Even Gojo's whole, like, I'm super into the Ningyo dolls or whatever, the weird traditional Japanese dolls, it works, right? Because even Marin is like, yeah, you've got a hobby, fuck yeah, dude. Like, and she totally is cheering him on. Like, that's wholesome shit. We love that. It does kind of fall off as a whole. After the 4th episode, it can't really keep up with itself. I think it had set itself up to just to be like that, the 4 episodes, and then once it got past that, it was like, all right, well, what do we do now? And it's not like it was bad beyond that. In fact, I quite liked the ending. It's not like this awesome experience that everyone is making it out to be. It's just a show, and it's fun. Joseph Darling is like looking for diamonds in Minecraft, and you found one, and you're like, you only see one diamond, it's like locked in a wall, and you're like, oh, maybe there's more past this one. You take the first one, and then you see a second one, and it's like, oh, there's another one, and then you take the second one, and that's it. There was only 2 diamonds. So you were off hunting for something, and you got what you wanted out of it, but you felt like there could have been more, and you can't help but feel a little disappointed, right? That's what this was. Like, it's not like it was bad, and you still can get something out of this, but it kind of built up too much for itself at first, and then couldn't live up to it after that. Again, not to say that it's bad, but it's just not what everyone's making it out to be. It's just fun and cute. Next up, Leadale. I don't even know what to say about this one. Honestly, I could pay all the attention in the world and I would still not really know what's going on. I mean, they do a whole lot of nothing in this series. Like, I would watch episodes and then like 30 minutes after I was done, I would try to think back to what happened and I wouldn't remember. Like, none of the stuff that Kana does in this show has any real consequence. It's just her vibing. It's like the most cute, wholesome, overpowered fantasy thing. Like, literally the entirety of this show is her like sometimes beating up super powerful shit, visiting her adopted sons and daughter, and eventually adopting a child and settling down in a village. It's a bit unclear from the start of like what exactly Leadale itself was. Like, I get there were players reincarnated into the game after it stopped its operation, but it wasn't like clear that Kana had actually died. I think they established it a bit later, but the idea was that she had died, but she was saved by like the last second reincarnation into Leadale, because there were players who were alive and got reincarnated into Leadale, right? So she like was just about to kick it and got reincarnated into Leadale. So she ended up super overpowered because of all that time she spent in the hospital playing the game. And that's not really clear at the beginning. There's just this sinking feeling you get after every episode, like, wait, literally nothing happened. It's like a shadow looming over you, and it's made up for by the cuteness factor, but it still feels like nothing, like more nothing happens here than even most slice of lives. Like, it's all cuteness. That's the draw of it. It's a wholesome and cute power fantasy. I mean, if you're into that, check it out. I'm gonna run out of fingers. Next up is Genius Prince. This one is not Realist Hero, right? The Genius Prince who led his nation out of debt. Realist Hero who rebuilt the kingdom. Not the same. Get it in your brains. Imagine Realist Hero, but the protagonist is just as much of an idiot as he is competent. He doesn't think his kingdom is going to be able to survive, but by just doing his version of the bare minimum, which, you know, that's why he's a genius prince, he accidentally helps his kingdom thrive, and repeatedly, and with the help of his badass little girlfriend, of course. Rie Takahashi is back. Imagine Realist Hero, but he's down like 3 or 4 beers. He's loosened up a bit. He started complaining about random shit for no reason, kind of wants to do something stupid that he probably shouldn't, but is going to get away with anyway. Characters here are largely inoffensive. Wayne has his funny moments, and he's not bad by any means. I actually quite like watching him interact with the characters. He's pretty funny. He has a great voice too. I really like that he's mostly aloof, but absolutely jumps into action whenever someone insults Ninem. It's great. He's a really good protagonist. I have nothing to complain about there. Ninem is fun and very cute. Loa is delightful. Like, all of the side characters and supporting cast are just top-notch stuff. Like, at least as far as you would consider in a show like this, where, because it's not just Realist Hero, right? Like, Realist Hero is literally just administrative reform. This is like, yes, there's administrative reform, but it's more like the characters are trying to figure each other out, and there's action sometimes. Like, Wayne is actually a capable fighter, so it's not just Realist Hero. There's more to it than that, and I absolutely recommend this. It's a really, really fun show. It's kind of a rarity to be on board with like one-on-one conversations between the main character and his love interest all the time. Like, sometimes I find those conversations to be a bit dull and awkward, but Wayne and Ninem have no dull moments. They're always fun. Watching them interact is just a delight all the time. And they're largely in sync. Their dialogue flows really nicely back and forth. It's super enjoyable. Again, if you're into this kind of thing, it's just like a fantasy thing where the characters are super fun. They do talk a lot about administration and kingdom stuff that I don't really understand because I live in the fucking free world, dog. But it's very fun. I definitely recommend if you're into this kind of thing. Love the OP as well. I forgot to say of Orient, Breakout, and Level. I'm biased, of course, but still. Those are my 2 favorites. Next up is Tokyo 24th Ward. This first episode had me absolutely hooked. Like, I was out of my seat hype from the first episode, right? Yeah, you know a show's going to be good when it's got a double length first episode, right? It had so much momentum. The first episode had me absolutely fucking hyped for this. It's an original anime project, and it looks really good. The visuals are fucking awesome. It couldn't follow up. Like, it's got so much going for it. Like, everything around the actual setup of this show is fantastic. The dynamic between RGB is just phenomenal. The setting, like the little postmodern floating island type of deal, it's awesome. I love it. Like, everything surrounding this is just fantastic, and then they just couldn't follow through with it. It really slowed down around the middle, and it got too deep into like politics. It just tried to do too much. Here's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to go a bit deeper into this. So if you don't want spoilers, click away now or skip this part of the video. RGB are delightful, right? Like, you've got, on one side, you've got the vigilante graffiti artist who grew up in the slums. On the other side, you've got the upstanding, super serious policeman. And in the middle, you've got this kid who works at a bakery who's also jacked and wants to be a hero. They're all childhood friends, and it's just delightful. I love, like, watching them get on the same page, like, use their unique skills to work together. That's why I was super into the first episode, right? That was awesome. Their abilities were enhanced by the call from Asumi. Awesome stuff. And then it just went too deep into like political stuff. It should have just been about solving the mystery of the calls from Asumi. If it was just revealing the stuff about the Kanai system and it ignored like all of the weird political squabbles and the terrorist attack that happened around the middle, I would have been fine. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this show that makes sense, right? Obviously, you can't have the calls from Asumi happen every episode. That would make it too easy, or that would make them feel less special. You can't, like, of course there should be a part towards the end where the main 3 drift apart a little bit and have to get back on the same page for like a final confrontation of some sort. As I'm recording this, the show is not actually over because it was delayed a bit, but it tried to do too much. Like, if it had just stayed very simple in its premise, I would have been totally on board. Like, I'm cool with it slowing down around the middle. That makes sense, right? But it just, I couldn't even follow it. I don't even, like, know what's going on. It just tried to do too much. And there's a lot of problems with, like, privacy and security. That's the whole deal with the Kanai system, is that the whole Tokyo 24th ward would be under surveillance. I just wish it was better. It could have been so good if it had just been a little simpler. Like, the world is definitely interesting enough that it deserves to be explored, and we've got a really solid cast of supporting characters here, like Shu's little girlfriend, who's adorable, Rand's little cast of YouTubers, and you know, I forget his name, green-haired boys, little police guys. Like, they're all good supporting characters, but it didn't really work for me. Like, they tried to do too much with the world, and it definitely deserved to be explored, but not to the extent that it was. Like, I just wanted to know, I wanted to see them do more with the Asumi phone calls. And there's a point where they're presented with a dilemma and they don't get to the optimal ending, and that absolutely should have happened, right? But that happened around like episode 5 or something, maybe 6, and then after that it just goes into politics, and I'm like, like, it's too much. That failure should have happened around 9 or 10, and then they get back on the same page for one final outing at 12, right? But that didn't happen. So again, this has yet to end, but I really feel like it let me down. Like, Tokyo 24th ward, imagine you're like, you've got a red fruit in your hand. You're like, oh, it's an apple. I love apples. And then it really looks like you're going to get your teeth to sink into it really nicely, and you can't wait to sink your teeth into it. And then you take a bite, and it turns out to be a tomato, and your teeth go like too far. And it's too easy to sink your teeth into, and your teeth like go all the way through the tomato, and it's not a pleasant experience. That's what Tokyo 24th ward was. You thought it was an apple, and it turned out to be a tomato. You thought you could really sink your teeth into it and have a fun time, and then it gave way when you tried to sink your teeth into it. It just like, well, this isn't fun anymore. I mean, honestly, if you want to watch the first episode of this, you can just do that. Just watch the first episode and be done. Like, the first episode is awesome. Let's talk about Tribe 9. Baseball, extreme baseball, new law implemented, tribe conflicts to be resolved through extreme baseball. You hear that? The government is on your ass now. You want your money back? You want your fucking loan paid off with 20% interest? You better fucking play baseball, assholes. Oh, you had a child kidnapped from your tribe by another tribe? You want her back? You better play baseball. Government, that's a fucking law. It's a law right there. Before I do anything else, the music for this show is unbelievable. The setting, like the whole futuristic setting where everything's all glowy and shit, and then the fucking techno music. Oh, dude, that's the good shit right there. I swear to God. Oh my God, I can't stress enough how good the music is in this show. If nothing else, watching baseball where they beat the shit out of each other is great when the music is like how it is at Tribe 9. It's so good. Art style is like very nostalgic as well. Like, it has this like mid-2000s anime vibe to it. It's really, really nice. Big fan. I do like how it attempts to build these characters like Haru and the other red-haired kid, and Arisugawa, who's adorable. In this like futuristic society that relies on extreme baseball. Like, it's not like these characters are particularly good, but I mean, for a show based around a game where you play baseball and beat the shit out of each other, I can't knock it for trying. Like, they're not bad characters. It kind of feels like there's no direction for it around the middle. The progression's a bit crap, and I'm still kind of unsure why Shun just dies or disappears. And then a blue-haired version of him comes in, and he's like, I have backstory with Oguro, and then they are eventually fighted out, and I don't know, like, there's a few missed opportunities here. Like, some of the storytelling was a bit weird, but it's baseball. if you want to watch baseball where they beat the shit out of each other, and well, the main character is Haru. He's a bit annoying, but the vibe is great. Let's talk about Reincarnated with a guy as something fantasy knockout. This show is great. I love this show. It pleasantly surprised me. The characters are relatable. Dialogue exchanges are quite nicely paced and well written, on top of being genuinely good comedy. And the introduction of the show doesn't waste your time and throws you right into it with the two main characters, Tachibana and Jinguji. You can't complain about that. I genuinely thought I wasn't gonna like this, but it's actually quite funny, and the way that these two guys, well, one of them is now a girl, how they interact with this completely unfamiliar world is quite charming and entertaining. I really can't knock it for that. Like, I don't have much to complain about here. I don't even have much to say in regards to my thoughts. I just think it's really good. Again, the chemistry between these two main characters, because of their long history and the way they interact with this new world, it's all genuinely entertaining, and it works to the show's benefit. I am a big fan. Like, this is one of the best fun casual watch shows I've seen in a long time. Definitely the best like casual watch for this season. It doesn't really make you think too much. It doesn't really require you to sink your teeth into it. The show is just genuinely funny, and pretty much anyone can get into it. I absolutely recommend this one for sure. Next up, Pupil of the Wise Man. This is going to be quick. I don't even have much to say here. We've got a VR MMO setting with two childhood friends at the center, with one playing a wise old sage character who accidentally fucks with his avatar after spending Fortnite V-Bucks and turns into a small girl who no one expects can pull off all the fancy summoning tricks that the old man used to be able to do. Pretty standard setup of power fantasy type stuff. And in this new setting where they're like in the game and 30 years have passed or whatever, the NPCs now have personality. What are we gonna do? It simultaneously feels like it has a story and it doesn't. Like, it feels like there was progression, but at the same time, it also felt like it went nowhere. Like, I just found myself in a trance watching the show. Like, it just does things. The characters do things, and you, as the viewer, can decide for yourself if they're important or not. Cool, I guess. Kuroitsu and the Monster Development Department. This show is not bad, and Kuroitsu is one of those characters who's so freaking adorable and sweet that you just can't help but get on board with her as the lead. Sense of humor here is pretty hit or miss. It's mostly hit, but it does miss sometimes, and the characters are largely uninteresting, but they do have their moments. It is fairly entertaining. It's not something that you can really sink your teeth into. It's another casual watch type of thing. It's not as consistent as Fantasy Knockout. It's overdramatic at the right moments. You can take to it pretty easily as a new viewer, even if it's a little all over the place. It's got a feeling of nostalgia to it while taking a look at like classic anime scenarios from the side of the monsters, right? Because in this show, they develop monsters to face off against magical girls and classic anime superheroes. The whole vibe kind of reminds me of the Demon Girl Next Door. But I think Demon Girl Next Door's comedy was a bit more consistent. It's funny, but it's not like I wouldn't choose this over Demon Girl Next Door or like Combatants Will Be Dispatched. Like, there are other shows that are better, but this wasn't bad at all. If you're gonna watch it, you watch it for Kuroitsu, who's adorable. That's the reason. And it is cute. Like, there's a twist where she goes to like this fucking coffee shop or something, and the kid who works the front desk is actually the superhero they spend the whole show trying to beat. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cute, but it's, you know, that's about the extent of the plot development. Like, it's just the little handsome lad that Toka gets her lunch from. That's the superhero. There's a true identity. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't choose it over others of its same nature. It's fun though, cute. So strongest sage with the weakest crest is probably in the upper echelon of reincarnation power fantasies. I didn't think it was bad at all. Well, the one thing I can say about it is very consistent. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. There's not really much of them getting off track, which I appreciate. I mean, imagine Wise Man's grandchild, but the characters are 3 years younger. Plus, the main guy got reincarnated from a really strong guy from the past. Everyone's like, haha, he's got the crest of failure. He can't do anything. He can't possibly be overpowered. And then it turns out he's overpowered. Who would have thunk it? I mean, it's your pretty much standard, right? We got an overpowered guy who's reincarnated and is super focused on his goals, while all the women around him fall in love with him without him realizing. Standard power fantasy stuff. There's even a scary lady dragon who's actually quite funny. Iris is pretty consistently funny, actually. Character and story here are both pretty standard. Not bad, but not really anything to write home about. But admittedly, you kind of can't help but feel a little bad because Maddie actually takes these two genuine, like, 12-year-old girls, like preteen girls, along with him to go fight demons. Weren't they supposed to just be in school at this point? Like, it's a little much. But yeah, it's fun, it's consistent. There's a wholesome romance between the blonde girl and Maddie. It's quite charming, I guess. Yeah. It's a little charming, at least. Let's talk about World's End Harem. I cannot believe this show is the story of a man trying to save his virginity for the girl he loves in a post-apocalyptic world where every fertile woman on the planet wants to fuck the shit out of him. That's the story. That's the concept. It definitely seems ridiculous at first, but it's not even that bad at all. It certainly reeks of the old male fantasy, but at the same time, it still prioritizes a real, steady story progression, and it's even got decent characters to back it up. Like, they're not bad, they're not really good, but, like, they're nothing that takes away from it. Everyone plays their part pretty nicely, and I can't really knock it for that. I thought it was just going to be this absolute trash, but there was a lot more to it than I think I bargained for. As much as I wanted this show to be that ridiculous amount of raunchy fan service, there was actually a really well thought out world here, and it even dives into what I would imagine to be very real feelings of each of the very few men left on the planet. Like, each of these boys have their own motivations, backstories, feelings that play into who or they do not want to put their schlong inside of. The mystery surrounding the virus isn't bad at all either. There's even a moment, I had like a fucking eureka moment when I was watching this show, because the main organization, UW, are the ones that are like keeping they're like trying to keep a cure to the male killer virus under wraps, because right now UW basically rules the fucking world. They like fucking rule over the economy. And if a cure to the male killer virus got out, they would lose the control that they have. They would lose the economic power that they have. I know that's a lot of thought for a show about fucking a lot of girls and getting them pregnant, but it was true. It actually made me consider that. You know, the moment of me realizing, hey, UW are actually the bad guys, it was good, but the whole kill all men thing that's revealed towards the end is a bit weird. It's pretty dumb. Again, I feel like there was way too much that they tried to accomplish here. I actually think Shota's angle is one of the better ones, like exploring his feelings as like a teenager and just having, you know, being put into basically what is the equivalent of a mental facility where he can fuck any girl he wants. They go into his psyche, they delve into like how that affects him mentally. It's actually pretty interesting. And then he like kind of loses it a little bit and agrees to help the creepy blonde chick become the best in the world or something. You know, number one, about to become a dad to like 82 children, and then Reito reuniting with the girl he likes for like 30 seconds at the end. I just felt like they tried to do a little too much. Like, they had this American chick come in and she was like, I'm gonna kill you, but she pretended to be good, and then she said, I'm gonna kill you. It's a bit wacky. I don't even know, like, I don't even know. I don't even think I can know. I don't even know if I have the brain cells to comprehend. I don't even know if I want to comprehend, but if there's one takeaway from this, don't watch it on Crunchyroll. It's censored there. Now, let's move on to sequels. First up is Realist Hero Part 2. I cannot believe how many shows in the past couple of years or so have gotten me to care about economics, geography, infrastructure, and other mundane shit of places that don't even exist. What a time to be alive, man. Just like the other sequels we're going to cover in a second, this is mostly more of the same. It's Realist fucking hero. It's just someone trying to save Elfrieden with administrative reform while his harem of cutie pies fawn over him. It's delightful. Realist hero is like the quiet kid in school who gets B's and A's. He's like honor roll. He's not really killing it. He's not the best in school. He's a bit boring. Like maybe he goes home and reads his economics and history textbooks and he reads the passages assigned to him in time for class when no one else does, but he's not hurting anybody. He's good to talk to when you need to get brought back down to earth or need some help understanding the lessons. He's there for you when you need him. He's consistent. He's like that kid. That's what Realist hero is. It's Realist hero. What can I say? It's cute. Let's talk about Vanitas Part 2. The first part of Vanitas was pretty fun. I don't really care for vampire type stuff, but the genuine feel of the characters on top of the overdramatic nature and their complexity and the backstories of the characters, it got me hooked pretty easily. As unusual as it is, I don't have much to say about the first season other than I do like the dynamics between all the characters. Even the one-on-one dynamic between Vanitas and Noe, they work really well together. It's quite nice. And John and Domi are lovely. Lovely supports. And even the rest of the supporting cast are quite fun in their own right. Part 2 is a really good follow-up to Part 1. Getting more insight into John's backstory is huge. And Chloe has just as much of a compelling narrative as John does. They're intertwined, of course. The world of vampires and humans that this show sets up is really well constructed, and each of the characters' unique motivations work to even further build the world and our understanding of it. I mean, Chloe's arc was peak Vanitas. Like, there was a lot of good stuff, very good progression in that arc, and a lot of characters played big roles there. Even seeing more of Vanitas' past helped round out his character towards the end. It's largely more of the same from Vanitas Part 1, but it's still very entertaining from start to finish. The characters are just delightful. I'm a big fan of Vanitas and John. They are very cute. Let's talk Princess Connect. It's not bad, but it's certainly chaotic. It's an anime based on a gacha game, right? So it's a bit tricky. There's a lot of like random events in gacha games that pop up at random times. So when you try to make that into an anime, it can be a little all over the place, and it certainly is in Princess Connect. All over the place. That's definitely one way to put it. Somehow the goal of try every food doesn't really do it for me, but the characters are not bad and the backstories are all right. It's like trying to tell a story, you know, what with like Carol's, you know, deception and the true nature of Yuki's power. Yusiana's like her being the princess, and it's all like it's fairly standard. It could have worked pretty well, but there's just way too much happening, way too many characters and random one-off nothing episodes for them to really tell this story properly. It's cute, but kinda odd. Yuki, it really frustrates me. He can't quite interact with the people around him to the extent that I want him to, and I know it's because he has amnesia, but it's still a little frustrating. I'd be sold on Princess Connect if he was a little more active in the story, you know? If he could interact properly with the women around him. I would think this is the cutest thing in the world if he could do that, but I have a really hard time getting on board with the guy. He literally is incapable of holding proper conversations. But he's better this season, which is good. The other three have always been fun, but Yuki's getting better. He's getting there, and towards the end, they start telling the story of the fake Yustiana, and Yuki gets he gets his moments to shine. It also feels like they've got this sense of humor figured out this go round. Last season was hit or miss for me, but comedy was pretty generally good in this season. Even, you know, I complained about the one-off nothing episodes, but even so, they were generally pretty funny. And visuals are not playing around either. The animation is really excellent. Visuals, like the art style and stuff and the color palette, it's always been good, but the animation especially really stands out this season. Like the last season, it definitely feels touch and go. There are so many characters being introduced and thrown out all the time that the pacing isn't consistent. I do like that they try to establish backstory with Yuki, but the inconsistent pacing kind of makes it all fall flat. At least the last few episodes were a bit consistent, but when you try to adapt a gacha game, you're asking for trouble. Arifureta. This show has definitely made a name for itself, but I don't think that's necessarily in a good way. And maybe, just maybe, it's because Hajime's primary love interest is a 300-year-old vampire who looks like a 10-year-old. Maybe. I don't dislike Arifureta. The first season is kind of whatever. Hajime's really not that bad of a character. His intent to kill makes a lot of sense, like, the whole fucking power fantasy thing. I'm pretty sure this is the gold standard, or at least like what set the precedent for it. All of his supporting harem are quite funny. They're quite delightful in their own ways. They're all strong fighters as well, so they don't really take away from anything. They're not really inspiring characters. Kaori kind of has something going for her with the whole promise to Hajime. Like, there's almost a story there, but that's really it. This season is pretty much more of the same, but I do feel like it's a step up from the first season. Especially now that I don't have to go through the introduction. It's already been introduced, so they have more time to do more things. I mean, again, I'm kind of in a trance, just kind of watching from a distance almost. But you're just kind of watching them do their thing, and they're a little all over the place. But, like, the story's not really that exciting. And the girls fighting over Hajime gets old pretty quickly. But it doesn't waste any time, certainly. I mean, the whole goal is to, like, get to the end of all these dungeons, and by the time I learn that they're finally out of one, it feels like they're already getting thrown into another one. Like, everywhere they go, there just happens to be a dungeon. I thought there was only 5 of them or something like that, but apparently everywhere they go, there's just a new dungeon there. Let's hit the ancient power. Sure, I guess. I mean, tell me how you really feel, right? Don't waste my time. The one thing Arifureta certainly does right, it's very, very satisfying to see Hajime beat the ever-loving shit out of his enemies. I mean, that is very satisfying because, there's not a lot of things that, like, those super overdramatic, edgy, edgelord power fantasies can do objectively right, but wow. I mean, when Hajime was beating the shit out of his evil fucking classmate, that one guy who pushed him at the very beginning of the first season, holy shit, very satisfying. I will give it that at least. But I do feel like overall season 2 was a step up from season 1. So I can't really complain too much. I just have questions about UA specifically that I will refrain from asking. Yeah. Last show to talk about here. Have you ever felt like you're in over your head? Because that's what Platinum End makes me feel. This is the only 2 core on the list. There's a decent premise, decent characters, but at what point does it just become high-stakes Power Rangers? Again, there's certainly more to it than that, but Platinum End caught my attention because the manga is by the same people who made Death Note. So it's like, oh, maybe we should see what's going on here. And it kind of stood its ground for a while, and it kind of took a fucking huge nosedive at the end. I won't spoil it because I already ranted about it. If you want to see me rant about the very end of Platinum End, I might post that as like a clip or something on this channel. I ranted about the very end of Platinum End on a Firestorm video, and I have feelings about it, but I will refrain from getting to that here. Let's talk about Mirai for a second. The fact is, this story, as it's presented, would be pretty pointless if Mirai wasn't a pussy bitch who didn't want anybody else to die or wanted to minimize the amount of death, right? Like, it's that compassion, though, it turns into Mirai's strength around the middle of the show. It's just kind of frustrating to watch them from the outside because this is obviously one of those shows where there's a lot of tension between the main characters that could be resolved if they just spoke their feelings normally, right? I do like Mirai and Saki. I think they're very cute together. And even the supporting cast of, like, the guy with cancer who dies, spoilers, the crazy kid who dies, the other kid, the scientist, the crazy bitch. There's some alright characters here, and there's an element of realism to this show that is very chilling. I mean, and the angels as well. They're quite nice. Like, they do their jobs well. So I can't really complain too much about the cast of characters. Like, Nase as a counterpoint to Mirai works really well. And these characters all have their very obvious flaws, and that's part of the story they're trying to tell. And what I will absolutely give the show credit for is that it does a good job of setting up the rules of the god selection process. It sticks to them for the whole show. There's nothing, it doesn't ever develop past, like the rules of the game don't ever develop past the use of wings, red arrows, and white arrows, and your ability to give them to others, depending on the situation. It's always that. It doesn't ever evolve beyond that, which is to the show's strength. It's good. The Metro Polyman arc is definitely like the strength of this one, of this show, like as a whole, especially from like a more action-oriented perspective. The whole show, though, is thought-provoking, and it makes you think about like life and death and the meaning of happiness and that kind of thing. It's very deep. It makes you think about like religion, the existence of God or not. It gets very in depth, and despite having a lot of fantastical elements, there's still very real things that happen. There's a big emphasis on the use of social media and this big connected world that we live in, and that makes it very chilling because there's an element of realism to that, right? Like the progression of the story here is really interesting. One of the most chilling moments for me was like the realization of the final god candidate who had yet to be identified was the de facto smartest man on the planet. And that is a big turning point, because it's like this guy is really gonna think about the god selection process as a whole and what it would mean to become god. And it's very chilling, but at the same time, it invokes this element of like nihilistic realism and turns the entire show into like an atheist subreddit. I guess we'll call it interesting. Again, I'm not a fan of the ending, to put it very lightly, but I guess if you really want to have an existential crisis, I would recommend Platinum End. And I don't think it's bad. I think it's very thought-provoking, but it's a bit edgy, a bit slow. Characters can be really annoying and obnoxious to view from the outside. Interactions are a bit slow. I mean, the first half with Metro Polyman is good, at least. Everything after that, questionable. But it does make you think. So in that sense, it's interesting. But I mean, the entire show is an existential crisis, so take that however you want to. Next season is going to be really good. I'm very excited for next season. Spring is going to be top notch. A lot of good shows to look forward to. And I will have, I think, 20. I believe I will have 20 shows in the next roundup, which is 2 more than I had today. So I'll try to keep them brief, but we'll see what happens. I think the fact that I kept this under an hour is pretty good. So yeah, I'll see you guys soon. I'm going to talk about some more stuff in the near future, and I don't even know what else. My voice hurts.